Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the Eritrean invasion of Tigray and the ongoing civil war inside the former state of Ethiopia. And today, I've decided to use a different map to give you, the viewer, a better idea of kind of what we're seeing on the ground, to be able to discuss what we're seeing on the ground and show you relatively where the territorial changes have occurred and kind of who controls what at this point. So if you're new to the channel and you're just joining us, obviously the area that it encompasses this area here in the green is the Tigray region. The green dots are the areas controlled by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. Up here in the north sector, the northwest quadrant, the northern quadrant here, is areas in which we are seeing both the Eritrean army and Abiy loyalist forces attempting to invade the Tigray region from the north. The red is Abiy loyalist forces. The blue is Eritrean army forces. The areas in which they are shared, it means it is a joint operation with Abiy loyalist forces and Eritrean army forces. So if we start in the north, obviously we are continuing to see fighting taking place along the border areas near Rama and Zalambasa. There has not been a breakthrough by Eritrean army forces south from the shared Tigray-Eritrean border. In the west, we have seen some advances being made by the Eritrean military in conjunction with the assistance of Abiy loyalist forces. It's now being confirmed that Shire has fallen under the occupation of the despotic forces of the North Korean-like regime of Eritrea. And those forces are also being supported again within the vicinity of Shire, on up towards the border with Eritrea, with Abiy loyalist forces. We know that elements of up to multiple commando divisions, these are more like brigade formations, are also directly supporting the Eritrean military. Those commando brigades or divisions are Abiy loyalist forces of the former Ethiopian National Defense Forces. The area near Shire, we are also receiving reports that the Abiy loyalist airlines are now flying in additional supplies and troops directly into Shire. There is an airport to the southwest of Shire that the Eritrean army was able to seize and is now being used by the Abiy loyalist, not Air Force per se, but the actual airline to fly in additional forces and supplies. Now, the problem for the Eritrean military and those Abiy loyalist forces, they have a fairly lengthy logistical line running to the Eritrean border. The area around and inside the Eritrean border is very, very sparse, and it is very difficult to get supplies from the central part of Eritrea down towards Shire. That's why we're seeing these flights being taken directly into Shire, reportedly. Now, if you look to the south of Shire, this area here, you can see that is still controlled by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. To the north and northeast of Shire, again, Tigrayan Defense Forces. In all probability, we could see the Eritrean army continue a west to east advance towards the next city of Aksum, followed by Adwa, and then eventually towards Adigrat. This is relatively the same strategy that was used during the late 2020 invasion by Abiy loyalist forces and the Eritrean army before they were evicted from the Tigray region. Now, what is going to be challenging for both the Eritrean army and the Abiy loyalist forces as they are essentially entering the den of the lion. They are entering a territory that is incredibly hostile, that is incredibly resentful because of the atrocities that were committed and are still being committed by both the Eritrean army and the Abiy loyalist forces. And based on past operations, based on past incidents, we have seen that once the Eritrean military, the Abiy loyalist forces, gain a foothold inside of the Tigray region, they only control areas in which they actually have a presence, meaning actual forces on the ground at that specific time. And as they continue to move into the Tigray region, they're going to have to continue to build bases, build supply nodes that are going to be susceptible to Tigrayan counterattack. And that's exactly what happened during the course of 2021, when the Abiy loyalist forces and the Eritrean army was eventually evicted from the Tigray region. If we go back to 2021, just prior to Operation Alula, the massive counteroffensive by the Tigrayan Defense Forces that drove out the Abiy loyalist forces, the Eritrean army, all of this, what you see here, running from Shire to Adigrat, all the way down to Alamata, was controlled by those forces. The only area that the TDF, or the Tigrayan Defense Forces, controlled prior to Operation Alula was the Tenbian region, this area here. We know this area, the Tenbian region, has been further fortified and stockpiled just in case the same scenario would occur. Now, what we're seeing on the ground is something that is happening much, much slower, because the Tigray region has been fully mobilized, and the Eritrean army, the Abiy loyalist army, instead of facing off against 9,000 Tigrayan Defense Force personnel, they are facing off and fighting a fully mobilized region of Tigray, a de facto independent state as we speak. In the south, the Abiy loyalist forces have penetrated about 18 kilometers, 20 kilometers, seizing Alamata and Korem. And if they wish to proceed to Mekelle, another 100 kilometers through very, very hostile terrain, which has proven in the past to be very, very difficult for the Abiy loyalist forces to maintain control over, especially areas west of Mekelle, southwest of Mekelle, northwest of Mekelle. Again, kind of getting into that Tenbian region, that very rugged, mountainous terrain that the Tigrayan Defense Forces do so well in fighting in. I've been asked the question, how long is it going to take for the Abiy loyalist forces, the Eritrean army, to enter Mekelle? I would say at this point, that is not a foregone conclusion. There is a lot more fighting to be done before the Eritrean army or the Abiy loyalist forces make it to Mekelle. And again, much different than the first invasion. It was a mobilization process that took the better part of a year. These forces in the south that may try to move north towards Mekelle are going to be fighting a very fortified and fully mobilized Tigrayan Defense Forces, unlike before. I will say that I am somewhat surprised that we did not see the Tigrayan Defense Forces put up a fight for Shire in terms of drawing them in, the Eritrean army, into urbanized combat in Shire. But in all probability, at this point, as and if the Eritrean forces start to move east towards Axum, again, these supply lines, northwest of Shire and Shire itself, could be threatened by those Tigrayan defense forces in the southwest and to the northeast. As the Eritrean army moves from Shire east, if it does not secure its northern and southern flank, which is going to be very, very difficult to do because it's going to take those forces going into those rugged mountainous hills to the north of that main highway and to the south of that main highway into the actual den of the lion, the Tigrayan Defense Forces. And that's where they do good at fighting, in those mountainous hills and regions. The terrain running from the Eritrean border down to Shire, relatively flat. And quite honestly, once we observed this renewed invasion, I had assumed that Shire would have fallen about 2 weeks ago. But it did not. They were able to hold on to this area for about 2 weeks longer than I had even believed that they would. In the south, same scenario. Again, fairly flat running up to Alamata. Now, I will say that the area to the west of Korum is not, and we have seen some success by the Abiy loyalist forces, specifically some of these Amhara regional forces, fighting fairly proficiently in that mountainous terrain just west of Korum. But ultimately, I guess the next process, the next decision-making process, is going to be whether the Abiy loyalist forces decide to move north. And by all indications, that appears to be the case. It appears that the intent of the Abiy loyalist forces and the Eritrean army is to seize control of all major cities and control the airports. Now, the problem with that was the same scenario, the same strategy that was used just prior to Operation Alula. If the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue to control the mountains in the Tenbian region, in other areas of the Tigray region, no matter what happens on the ground, no matter how many cities the Abiy loyalist forces take, eventually, with an industrial strength insurgency, those forces are going to be degraded and defeated with absolute certainty. The ability of the Abiy loyalist forces to conduct a long-term occupation of the Tigray region successfully is in all probability less than 10%. And it will come at an immense cost in both lives and treasure for the former state of Ethiopia, the Abiy loyalist controlled state. And I should probably mention why I call it that. Again, we are seeing Abiy Ahmed become very close allies with the despotic nation state of Eritrea. There are no property rights in Eritrea. There's really no legal system inside of Eritrea. We are now seeing in Addis Ababa, the capital of the former state of Ethiopia, also known as Finfine, the elimination of property rights, the elimination of due process, a migration towards despotic rule, just like we see inside of Eritrea. That is what the former state of Ethiopia is becoming under the leadership of what some people now call the tyrant, the warlord, Abiy Ahmed. Well, that's all I have for today. Again, we are going to continue to monitor, report, watch things very, very closely on the ground, and bring you more content as we receive more information. It was a pleasure to talking with everyone today. Please feel free to comment. And as always, have a good day.